So, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining me. I'm Kevin. I'm here to talk to you about complaints. Amanda brought up some great points about, maintaining your address, and Sarah talked about record keeping. And complaints, those are what happens when you fail to listen to their advice. So, I'm here to tell you about them. Let's get started. So, what is a complaint? When a member of the public believes that you have violated your notarial duties, they may make a formal complaint with our office. These complaints are going to allege specific violations of your duties, which we will then investigate. Now, right from the start, I want to make sure that you're aware that we will not investigate things relating to whether the document itself is fraudulent. We do get a lot of complaints from people that have been harmed by some kind of fraudulent document, and as long as you complied with all your notarial duties, then we will not take any action against you based on that complaint, even if the document was used improperly. What we do investigate, like I said, are allegations that you have violated your notarial duties. Notarial duty in this case are going to be things like checking ID, notarizing documents only when the signer is present, keeping a logbook, and properly filling out the notarial certificate. There's of course a lot more, like Sarah mentioned, record keeping as well. If you're failing to respond to those public information requests, then that can become an issue. So you have many duties as a notary. If you fail to comply with them, you might have a complaint in your future. The bottom line is that while you aren't responsible for verifying the contents of the documents themselves, you do have those duties, and if a complaint alleges those violated duties, we will open an investigation. So should you be worried about this? Honestly, yes, you definitely should. A complaint can be very serious and it needs to be handled properly, but that doesn't mean you need to panic. We're going to go over them today so that if you do have a complaint filed against you, you know how to handle it. So the complaint process. The first step in this is going to be a preliminary review by the Secretary of State. We're going to take a look at the complaint, we'll look at all the evidence that's included with it, and we're going to figure out whether or not the evidence and the complaint support the idea that you have violated your notarial duties. Sometimes we get a complaint, we don't even open it because, like I said, sometimes or often even, it's about fraudulent documents and not necessarily what you as a notary have actually done. But if the complaint does allege any violation of your notarial duties, then we're probably going to open that complaint. The next step is going to be sending a letter to your official address. Of course, we do want to get your side of the story, and that's going to be your opportunity to actually respond to that complaint. Obviously, it's extremely important to be able to give your side. Looking at these, we often have very, very different stories between the complaint and the notary, so you want to be able to give your side of the story so that we can hear everything. The third step is going to be continued investigation by our office. If we need to, we'll contact the complainant again, we'll send you some follow-ups, or we might contact some witnesses. We'll contact who we need to make sure that we can get a good idea about what happened and get any information we need necessary to make a final decision on the investigation. Then the final step is, of course, action based on those findings. And as far as the complaint goes, that's the end of the road. So now you're probably asking, what do you do if a complaint's filed against you? Like I said earlier, you're probably going to be very worried, and that's the right feeling to have. This is a serious matter, and it can end with some very negative consequences, including revocation of your commission. There's two things that every notary should do to try to help themselves out if a complaint is filed against them. First, you're going to want to keep your address updated. Amanda already talked about that, but I'm going to stress it again. It's really important. If your address isn't updated, we may be able to try to find you, but that definitely doesn't always work. I had a notary recently. She had a complaint filed against her. She worked for a title company, and obviously, they notarize documents all the time. Being a notary is probably a huge asset in her line of work. And the complaint made some pretty serious allegations. So she never responded to that complaint. I tried to reach out to her, tried to find her address, any alternate addresses, and even tried to call her at her work, but I wasn't able to get in touch with her. That meant that we never got to hear what she had to say. We never got her side of the story. And we had to make a decision based on that complaint, based entirely on the allegations in the complaint. And I'm pretty sure she did not get the outcome she would have wanted. Now, of course, it's possible she didn't even know about the complaint, or maybe she ignored it. But the bottom line is we never got a response, and we could never get in contact with her. And the moral of the story is make sure you keep your address updated so that we can find you. Second, you're going to want to respond carefully to the complaint with specifics. That probably sounds obvious, but I'm going to stress that as well. We're going to be looking at all the details. I often find the notary has, really important information that they might not even realize is important. So if you give us everything you have, we'll try to put the pieces together to determine whether or not there was a violation. And, remember, we do consider evidence from both sides. And that's another thing I want to stress, remember that we do not represent the complainant or the notary. We do not start our investigation with any assumption that any of you have done anything wrong. We simply act as an independent investigator. So, the part you've all been dreading, let's talk about the outcomes. Now, keep in mind that these are just the outcomes with our office. If you have violated your notarial duties, then there could be criminal or civil penalties. Those would be handled outside of the complaint process through the judicial system. So this is going to be what could happen based only on the complaint. There are many different outcomes, but today we're going to go over the most common 5. The first is going to be revocation of your notary commission. Now, obviously, that means at that point, you can no longer be a notary. You can't notarize any documents. The second is suspension. That's usually going to be 3 to 6 months where you can't act as a notary. The third, educational action. Those are going to be things like tests or outside training that our office provides that'll make sure that you understand what your duties actually are. The fourth is going to be a formal warning. It's going to go on the record. It'll be in your file, but you won't have to respond to it in any way. And then the fifth is, of course, the outcome you guys are all hoping to find, and that's going to be that there are no grounds for action. We'll have looked at the complaint, and based on our investigation, there are no grounds to say that you breached your duties as a notary. So, in final word, just remember that we will always consider the seriousness of the offense as well as your history as a notary when we're making a determination on, what outcome should happen in this case. Our goal is to make sure that each notary understands their duties and complies with the law. So, finally, back to the final thing. Should you be worried? Like I said, yes, you definitely should. It's not the end of the world, though. This is a process you're hopefully never going to experience, but if you do, now you know at least a little bit how to prepare for it, what to expect, and hopefully we can make it through. Just be open and make sure we know how to contact you. Thank you, everyone.